Hello tanks and tankettes, welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 12, and we're kicking this one off with I am the one true nub. Let's see if he can live up to that name. He's in the 110E5 and this is a 9.10 replay, so it is the buffed 110E5, which is quite considerably buffed compared to what it used to be. Although it was always a good tank, it's just for some reason Wargaming decided it needed more armour frontally. Now, I like armour, I'm not going to complain, I'm just not entirely convinced it was necessary, but anyway, it's tougher now, a lot tougher. He is on Prokhorovka. He is, well, I almost said he's top tier there, because, yeah, he's tier 10. That wouldn't have been at all obvious to everyone that he was top tier. No. But he's come to the hillside, and there's no artillery to worry about, so he can actually sit here and be reasonably comfortable. I will note, 2 of the 3 replays I have for you today are 9.10 replays, and I decided that I was going to have to do the thing where I record them twice, one in free cam and one with the player point of view, because, yeah, 9.10 replays are quite often super buggy in terms of the player point of view. It's really nauseatingly jerky, and I really hope that they fix that with the next patch. I've got my fingers crossed, because it's an annoying one. It takes basically twice as long, because you have to record everything twice, and you have to sit and edit everything together, intersperse the 2 viewpoints, and it's, oh boy. Anyway, it does my RSI no good. So he's already racked up a bit of damage. I mean, I don't think they touched the gun, but it was a very good gun. It definitely didn't need touching. So as long as you're aiming for things like, you know, low front plate or side armor or axles or whatever, stuff like the IS-7, you really won't have any difficulties. It's a pretty nice all-rounder, this machine. In fact, even more so than it used to be, because of course now it's got that extra armor. Now I will say this is not a super amazing game, but my criteria for these matches are different, because of course these are my Patreon supporters that are sending these in, so it's not that I have the same things in mind when I look through these replays as I do when I look at normal viewer replays, so do bear that in mind. But even though I've said that, it is still a pretty decent game, and hopefully you'll think so too. So he's moving up with this IS-7, there's a couple of tanks behind them, and although well, they've taken out the enemy IS-7, there have been 2 other tanks spotted here and a T-44 down by the tracks. It seems like the vast majority of the enemy team must be on the 1-2-3 line. Now he just got slightly booped by the IS-7, who then decides to push him forwards, because I don't know. But we're going to see the armour come into action here, because he's just able to sit here and, well, I don't know what was shooting at him out of the... I think the WZ did shoot him once. I had in my mind that he gets shot more when he's up here, but apparently not. Oh, there we go, the T-44 shot him again. But the T-44 absolutely would have no chance against this thing frontally, because, yeah, tier 8 mediums and tier 10 games facing things frontally, that's always fun. So fun. It takes out 1390 with a very nice shot. But I will say, I think he's making a bit of a mistake here, because... yeah, although this thing's tougher, when he's coming up like this, he's exposing his lower front plate, and they still have a Jaegeru left alive, and there's all the other tanks that are still around there as well. So, yeah, he's just been spanked a bit. He's just lost, what is that, nearly 800 health from whatever it was that hit him. I can't tell with my mods these days, which is probably a fairer thing for all concerned. However, he actually realises his error, and he moves to use this carriage as cover, so now it's only really his turret that's exposed, and at the ranges most of these things are going to be shooting at him, well, even with the old 110E5 turret, it would have made their lives a lot harder, but with the fact that the MG binnacle is now a lot tougher than it was, that makes this a really, really nice position to be in indeed. So he can just sit here and, well, this enemy team absolutely, although the numbers are even, well, a bit less even now, this enemy team absolutely gave this game away. They just played, for the most part, most of them, super passively. They all just crammed into that corner, and it has not paid off at all, because now they're just being fired on from all quarters, basically. They are utterly surrounded. So whoever gets spotting out of this is possibly going to do very well indeed, and I think that's what our 1390 has in mind. Now at this point, One True Nub decides to press up. We know there's an IS-3 not that far in front of him, and he's moving such that he is keeping that ridge line between him and the enemies. But again, when he gets up to this ridge line, I think he's a bit hesitant, a bit non-committal. He kind of, instead of going forward, instead of pressing up, well, not just at this moment. I mean, at this moment he's lighting up, shooting at some of these things that have been lit up, but a little later on he just kind of again sits at the top, and it's not really the best plan. Now there is a challenger on the enemy team who was platooned up with somebody in a tier 8 tank and managed to get this matchmaking, so that guy had to be really hating his life. Meanwhile the T-44 went for the IS-3, and One True Nub goes for the kill. There's also a Leopard 1 coming in, and this is the point where I think he should have gone forward. He should have committed, and instead he pulled back, and that possibly was the difference between losing that 800 plus health and having to use his repair kit on the ammo rack and not. Because if he'd gone forward, well, the Jaegeroo still might have penned him, but there's every chance it would have hit some of his stronger armour and maybe bounced off instead. So maybe that was a bit of overcautiousness on his part. Personally, I would have committed, I would have gone forward and been a bit more active in helping out the T-54 with the Leo 1 coming over. But, I mean, he's still alive, he's done 6,000 damage, and we're down to the last couple of enemies at this point. So, although it was even on numbers for a little while, it really is now just a runaway victory, basically. So the KV-4 goes down, there's still Panther 2 around. The Jaeger is pretty low health, he's just gone down, so that just leaves the Panther 2. And this maybe could have been slightly better aimed, but even so, the shot went low. And unfortunately, well, that's going to be his last opportunity to do damage. Well, theoretically his last opportunity, because, well, there we go. The match is over. So, that was a first class. He got high caliber and a top gun, 6 kills. So that wasn't too bad. You know, 6,000 damage in a tier 10 heavy is still pretty respectable. It's still pretty decent. So when I said this wasn't a fantastic game, you know, he didn't have the super moves maybe, but it was still a very solid, competent tier 10 heavy game, and it shows maybe reasonably well what the 125 is capable of these days. And as you can see, second place on the team. The T-54 did about half his damage, but was firing at higher tiers and maybe got a bunch of spotting damage as well. So yeah, and there you can see damage blocked by armor 3,830. Pretty good, really pretty good indeed. So yeah, I like the 125 better these days, but I'm still not convinced it needed those buffs at all. Next up we have Runaway Brave Sir Robin, which is just as excellent a name as when we first encountered it with a box tank replay of his a couple of episodes ago. Now if you haven't seen that one, he is on the SEA server, so that's why his ping looks quite so terrible. It's usually, looking at this, between 160 and 180, so with a slower machine, well, you can get used to it, but it will have a bigger impact when you're in a faster tank like the RU-251 here. I will also note this is the other 910 replay, so if you're wondering if there's a strange disparity between the third person point of view and the sniper point of view, that's because it's his point of view in sniper mode and free cam in the arcade mode, just as with the previous replay. And I think it was actually exacerbated by the ping. It was exceptionally jerky in places, which is not good. I mean, it was nauseating me just watching it, so yeah. It doubles my work, but you know what? I'm not going to subject people to that particular bug just because it's a really annoying one. So he's starting off with some heat shells because I guess he thinks he might be firing at things frontally, but as it turns out, no, the first shot was into the side of a Foch 155, which absolutely does not need premium ammo or a heat shell. His HE would have done rather nicely there, actually. This thing has quite interesting HE shells in that they have, I think it's about 100 penetration. So there's a lot of targets, squashier tank destroyers and things where you can get them in the side and rear armor, where the HE shell is actually a really good choice with this tank. And the Canonian Jagdpanzer is exactly the same. It has that same HE, although the AP on that thing is better. But I will say, some of the gun stats of the RU-251 are actually better than the Canonian Jagdpanzer, despite the fact that that's a fixed gun tank destroyer. And generally speaking, those should have better stats. in terms of their handling and their DPM and things like that. But anyway, that's by the by. Don't buy the Canonian Jagdpanzer is you know, the subtext there that I then went and said because, you know, I'm subtle like that, I suppose. So he spots an opportunity to maybe hit the pattern if he backs out, and, well, the pattern's tracked, so he tries a shot. Don't know if it hit or not, but the artillery finishes him off, so, okay, not going to get any more damage out of that guy. However, the Waffle drives past at just that instant, so that's another nice little bit of damage. And with the 90mm gun, it is really only kind of chipping away, but it's a 90mm gun and a very small, fast machine, so it seems like a pretty reasonable little tank, this, if you know what you're doing in Scouts. So our Type 61 moves up, and apologies if you can hear fireworks in the background, by the way. And he also just dodges a couple of shells, one from the AMX, one from probably the 110E5, or maybe the Mouse. And there's also an E3 down there as well, and I suspect that big clunk into the ground was the E3 shell. So it's probably a good thing none of those hit. That could have been nasty. You get to hit into the T92, the AMX-30's been finished off, and maybe you could get a kill, but it goes low into the track, so oh well. Now, it's not like you can go on mad artillery killing dashes on this map particularly, but still, an artillery kill would have been nice. It is, in some ways, the function of scout tanks, although a lot less than it used to be. I remember the glory days of the T50-2, and half your time was spent looking for opportunities to break through enemy lines and go for enemy artillery. And that's just not really possible these days with the current crop of scout tanks, and also the maps as we have them these days. The nature of scouting has changed quite a lot. Now this is, by the way, here you can see some of what I mean about the particularly jerky, even in sniper view it was really quite jerky, and in arcade view it was pretty bad as well. So that's an Object 704 down there, which has, well, okay frontal armour, reasonably troll frontal armour, but it's not great. And, well, he's not angled, so that is making Brave Sir Robin's job a little bit easier. So he's actually able to, and this is risky, that's an Object 704, that's a rather nasty gun, but he's actually able to just pop out and keep putting damage through this guy's front and lend his gun to his teammates' firepower. Now, it's made slightly awkward by, oh, that pen. Slightly awkward by that phone box being there and sort of obscuring his view a bit, but no, he managed to squeeze 714 damage out of the object, so that's not too bad. That's a higher tier tank destroyer. That's going to be worth a bit of XP. He's onto his heat shells now, because that's an E5, and actually that does the trick. And that is the buffed E5, so that might have been a lucky pen roll there, I'm not sure. So the 704 gets finished off, and there is an E3 there. He doesn't want to tangle with that frontally, so... Ooh! Just misses. Well, actually, I think just misses. That was more of a wider miss. I think the E3 just kind of guesstimated when he was going to drive around the corner, and there go the fireworks again. This is such good timing. So yeah, that could have utterly obliterated him if the 183 had hit him. You know, a Hess shell would have been the end. So the E3's just nailed the T57 heavy, but this is the part where those HE shells come in very handy, because the E3 doesn't have a turret, and yes, that damage counter went a bit nuts there, didn't it? So he can just basically sit behind this guy and pump HE shell after HE shell into his engine deck, which doesn't have a lot of armour. The E3 is very tough frontally, but the rear engine deck armour, not so much. So the reticle derps out a little bit there, but oh, that was a nice roll, 342, so yeah, that was definitely a penetrating shot, and finishes it off. There we go. So, that was his own point of view for that entire engagement, by the way. We've transitioned back to free cam. There's not a lot left now, it's a Mouse and a WZ-132, and he's sitting on over 3,000 damage. And there's the last scout. Now, he's got an HE shell loaded still, and so the truck would stop it, so we puts it into the turret. However, he then goes to an AP shell, and he could just fire through the truck, and I'm not sure why he doesn't. And he's taken an HE penetration himself, and it's very lucky that that second HE pen, well, that second HE shell didn't pen, is what I was going to say, because that could have taken off even more health. But anyway, he came away from that with an Ace Mastery and a Confederate, nearly 4,000 damage in this scout, you know, 90mm gun. that's pretty good. And as you can see, he got LT15 as well. So he was pretty pleased with that result, I'm sure. There we go. 3,800 damage, 3 kills, 1,500 base XP. And as you can see, his team was doing pretty well also. It's not like he was having to carry, which is very hard in a squashy scout tank. But yeah, it definitely helps that, well, you can see his own screens there. He's got his female crew in this thing, or a female crew anyway. So, yeah, that was a pretty good result in the RU-251. I'm not sure what else to say about it. It was very well read. He pressed up with his allies. He lent his gun to their own. He was aiming pretty well. He took advantage of the E3 very nicely. So, all in all, I think that was, yeah, it was a pretty good game. Lastly, we have Island Man 224, which should be a fairly familiar name by this point. This is actually a much older replay. This is patch 8.10, as you can maybe tell from the graphics. And he's in the T-34-2, which is not the most popular machine, but it can do okay sometimes if you've got your head on a swivel and your teammates are okay. And it's one of those tanks where there's a lot of ifs and buts when it comes to, you know, you can do well, but you need this and you need that and you need the other thing. So, yeah, it's one of those machines. Now, I'm pretty sure he's got the top 100mm gun on this, which is... I'm not sure how it relates to the Type 59's gun, actually, but it's 181 pen with 250 average damage. There's also a 122mm option, if you're feeling particularly masochistic, which has a horrible rate of fire, horrible aim time, horrible gun handling, and basically no one uses it. It's pretty much what the T-34-3 has, in fact, although that might have slightly better stats with that gun. But that also has the benefit of limited matchmaking, which this does not. And yes, the fireworks are still going, that's fun. But I really, unfortunately, can't wait until they've finished. I honestly don't know why they're doing it today. I'm recording this on the 6th. Fireworks, bonfire evening, when people usually let off with the fireworks and have bonfires and whatever, is on the 5th. So... I don't know. It's terrible weather outside. Somebody's waited an extra day when they could have had nicer weather and it would have been the correct day yesterday evening. They've done it just to annoy me. You know what? I bet it's Caption Guy. He's been saving up his fireworks and he's been waiting and now he's just being a jerk. So, yeah, well played, Caption Guy, I suppose. So we know there's a 5100 around that corner and he absolutely does not want to just go around into that guy. Actually, no, there isn't a 5100 around that corner. What was around that corner? I was not paying attention. There's the 5100. So, yeah, that's something to be wary of. An autoloader versus a medium tank. Well, if he's squashy. If he's not paying attention, Island Man can do some damage here. But, of course, the 5100 could easily clip him if he's got a full clip. Although it looks like he's concentrating on other things right now. So, that's rather useful for Island Man. So he's been able to squeeze out a bit of damage, but those were both quite low rolls. And finally gets an above average roll there, 260. So that's, you know, the vagaries of Wooler tanks sometimes, especially with the lower damage guns like this. So that's the SU-152 out. The 5100's presumably withdrawn to reload. And there's the enemy M103 who's tangling with our M103. And this is actually ideal for... well, any medium tank would be good in this situation, but for something like this, where you've got an enemy showing squashy side armor and they're just completely distracted by someone else and you can just take complete advantage. So, the M103 I think is down and the T-54's made an appearance, but he has wandered into, you know, a whole bunch of enemy tanks, so that was an unwise move on his part. Meanwhile, we can see the 5100 is making a relocating move here. And Island Man's paying attention to that because he knows well how dangerous this guy is. But he can at least block him from maybe coming around. So he gets a shot in. 5100's first shot is pretty bad. And Island Man actually makes a big mistake here. Goes forward, the guy tracks him, and yeah, he just lost a rather big chunk of health there. So that guy has, I don't know, 2 shells left, maybe 3 shells. Not sure, but Island Man... does not want to... That was not good play. I mean, he ended up being kind of ramped up on that pile of wood and getting tracked, and then Yeah, that was 40% of his health in one go. So he's going to have to be a bit more careful from now on. That was a lot of health traded away for. Well, I mean, it did do some health, to, some damage to that 5100, but even so, yeah, that was definitely suboptimal. So there's an ST1 defending, and he decides he's going to go back and help the cap. But just at that moment, a 1390 appears, so this could also be nasty. But the 1390's gun is terrible on the move. He does get one hit in, but that's all he's going to get because 2 shots was enough to kill him, which is quite useful. There's not a lot of tanks left on either side at this point, actually. We're down to just a couple, and, well, the ST1 has succumbed. We know there's a KV-5 capping, and the SE-152 is also here. So, yes, this is possibly going to be tricky, because he doesn't have a lot of health left now. And, well, the turret armor on this is decent, but the hull armor is not that great. So even for a weaker gun like the KV-5s, it's not going to have that much trouble penning him. And the derp gun, on the, even on the SU-152, definitely isn't going to have trouble penning him. Meanwhile, the M103 and Tiger II have pressed north, and, well, there's still one enemy artillery extant, but this is basically the remains of the enemy team. Now, as at this point, I realised that KV-5 isn't reacting. Either the KV-5's connection dropped or the client crashed at just, you know, the moment after they drove into the cap circle, or they drove into the cap circle and tabbed out and thought, right, we've won it, it's fine. So basically, this is, in theory, 2 versus 2, but 2 versus 1, but it's actually 1 versus 1. And the SE-152, well, I think that was, I wasn't paying attention, that was a derp AP, I think, that went in the turret, and, or maybe it was derp HE that went in the turret and just didn't do much damage. I wasn't paying attention at that exact moment. But either way, with the derp gun on the SU-152, well, one good hull shot would finish off Island Man, but Island Man's not going to let that happen. So the SU has backed off a bit. He realises he's in danger now, but Island Man just has to, there we go, finish him off. So that's a nice extra bit of health. That was really the only real threat, because the KV-5 is still not moving. Just sitting there. This is just free damage for Island Man, basically. And he's not even at an angle that's awkward for Island Man to look at this. Just, nope, not there at all. Okay, I'll just kill that guy then. Immediately drives around the house. Artillery's already tried to take one pot shot at him, but missed, so he doesn't want to be sitting out in the open or turning around in the open when artillery might just blap on him from above. But they have pretty much won at this point. I mean, it was a pretty close fight, but it really does just come down to finding the artillery. And actually the M103 was capping but drove out the cap. The Tiger II came all the way back. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, it was a nice thought, I guess. Also, the replay's being a bit jerky here, maybe. Is it behaving itself now? I don't know. Anyway. So the M103, I don't think it was altruistic. I don't think it was like, yeah, just you go find out that find that enemy artillery. I think it was, I want to find the enemy artillery, but the artillery wasn't in that corner, so it's now down to Island Man to get this last bit of damage. And this is pretty much the best bet for where that GW Tiger might be, basically. I mean, there's not really many other places he could have gone. And yes, there he is. Now, Island Man could have fired some HE shells into that very squashy superstructure, and it would have meant that he would have killed the guy a bit quicker, because there's one shot. Second shot is not going to do it. That was an exactly average roll, so he's actually going to need 3. Whereas with the HE shells into the superstructure, that would have been an easy 2-shot kill. But anyway, there we go. There's the last kill. So that was a Defender medal, and yeah, it was quite a nice game, but the KV-5 going out of the game and just being AFK in the cap circle was a real stroke of luck. That would have been very much tougher if that guy had actually been playing, but as it was, he was just free hit points for Island Man. So there we go, Island Man comfortably on top of the team with almost 5,000 damage and 4 kills, which is pretty good for this 100mm gun with only 250 average damage. So yeah, I mean, you're not going to see that many replays of this thing generally, because I think it's harder to have good games in this thing generally, but this definitely was a good result. This was almost as much damage as that first game in the T1 10E5, so yeah, if you can get a machine like this to do results like that, you know you must be doing something right. So that's it for this fortnight's replays. If you've enjoyed them, you can hit the like button. You can leave any comments below. You can check out my Patreon link below. And as always, stay tuned for more.